are getting ready for our first match here between Javier Dominguez and Mason Clark. Looks like Mason is on the play with a pretty respectable hand there. Dingo up against. Oh, excuse me. It looks like Mason is up top. Mason's hand is a lot less respectable, but Javier's hand looks really nice there, Dingo.
No beans on the side of Mason, and looks like Mason mulliganed to 6 and has that Jace in his opening hand. Not going to be relevant for a while, but I think the +1 does say draw a card, so that's something in the very least for
Oh,
Mason.
yeah.
And we see just a fantastic start on the side of Javier. Turn to Beans, Fire Ice to tap down Mason's mana and stunt them for a turn. I like Javier's position with his opening hands.
Yeah, I like it a lot better than the old Sacred Foundry Stomping Ground Jace Wielder of Mystery type draw. That always looks so awkward when it's your one of that, is kind of, and Jace is really there for just mill insurance, in case you draw your entire deck, you can just keep drawing without, thinking, should I play being number 3? Should I not? I don't want to draw my whole deck, but this version that Mason's playing, which is going to be pretty decent in the Bean Mirror, just says, yeah, I can deck myself and I'll still win the game.
Yeah, it looks like Javier's opting to leave up Fire Ice here and try to prevent the Cascade from Mason. But we know that Mason does not have a Cascade spell and instead has a really terrible mana base for his quad blue spell, or triple blue spell, rather. Time Warp is the pickup for Mason. He will be able to cast Omnath next turn, but no fetch land until turn 5 for him. On the side of Javier, we got a little Teferi,
A
maybe
little
minus.
Teferi to yeah, either tick up, tick down, play that game. I usually like ticking up to start when you don't need to draw a card, so you can play around Fury. Not that Fury is the most important thing, but we'll see what Javier cares about. And I didn't really remember if there were Fire Knights in both lists. You definitely just want to tick up.
Yeah, let me check. Mason's got 4 copies of Fire Ice, and so does Javier.
And maybe a small misstep here from, I wouldn't even say necessarily a misstep because you kind of want to play Omnath anyways, but with leading with Foundry and Stomping Ground, you definitely negate the fact that you could just stop or keep top decking blue sources to play Jace, but maybe you just want to save Jace anyways until your last spell.
Yeah, I assume that Mason expects this matchup to go very long since, Bean Mirrors kind of do that from time to time. They play a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
Magic. Mason actually told me, he said, the reason I played Beans today was because I wanted to maximize my camera time before I get eliminated.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's very smart. You got to get your camera time in while you can. Me on the other hand, I'd like to say I just have a wide range at the Super League with 3 different decks. But really, the reality of it is I came to learn how busted, Rakdos Evoke is,
One of us.
or Scam, whatever we're calling it on this broadcast. I just figured out how busted it is this last weekend. I went to casual 18-2 over my first 20 matches I played with the deck, and I'm like, oh, I've made grave mistakes in not playing this deck
I get it now.
before this. So yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm just going to stick to this deck here, at least for this week and see how it goes. But deck's pretty good there, Dingo. Maybe you were right the whole time.
Maybe I was onto something, but it looks like Javier's also onto something, deciding if he wants to cast a second Bean or maybe ice down this Omnath or just Sinkhole it. But I don't think he has enough cards in his graveyard to be able to delve for the Sinkhole here, so probably just a second Bean. Maybe you can rip a white card and invoke this Solitude. No white card.
Yeah, but just goes to bounce it instead. I like that. It's still going to open the door here for Mason, and we're going to have that turn. Omnath, Fetchland, Time Warp here, and there's nothing that Javier can do about right now. That is really how Mason's deck really just goes way over the top, is these turns where you get to untap with 5 mana and be able to do your things. It looked awful for Mason, but this is exactly what he needed to get back into it. And on the flip side, if Javier had another white card here, this Solitude blowout play, would be basically GG.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that Javier minused and drew the Fury, because if he had minused on nothing and had drawn the Fury and could have Furied the Omnath, it would have been much further ahead at this point. But now it looks
Agreed. It's not the
like
right play, but situationally, it would have been really, really powerful. I'm with you.
interesting that Mason decided to get tapped Mistfield
Oh,
Plains instead
wow.
of casting Time Warp, opting not to kill the Teferi, even though he's got a Shardless Agent in hand, which looks like it was the pickup off the Beans.
It could be no other blue sources in the deck. The Windswept Heath, I already see Hollowed Fountain and Breeding Pool. maybe there's just not another blue source because you do need that, like you do need that fifth land to produce blue mana. And these mana bases, they're kind of wonky at
You are
times, you can't play a
correct.
ton of them. So
There's
yeah,
only
he
the
got
steam vents left.
got 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 him. The Steam Vents is in hand. Well, I guess Windswept Teeth couldn't get it anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes with how good the mana bases are in Modern, you think that any fetch can get any shock, but this is not the case here, and unfortunately, Mason does not have another blue source to cast the Time Warp or
Yeah,
the Jace until the Steam Vents comes down out of his hand.
and just like, I mean, I guess for Halloween, we'll say a Halloween analogy here. When you say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times, Bloody Mary, pops up. It's the same when you hear mana issues 3 times in a row. Someone says mana issues, Anurag's, hairs on the back of his skin pops up. He's like, oh, it's me. I have mana issues.
And we see Mason flash that text document that says thinking about those beans. And he is indeed, as Javier draws 2 off of this Fury, kills the Omnath. And it looks like he's set himself up pretty well to have another bean turn into more expensive spells next turn. Probably going to ban a couple of Shardless Agents here, running out of beans to cascade into. Back on the side of Mason.
One really important thing I want to bring up with that, I'm thinking about those beans meme. Do you think that old, gentlemanly man thought he was going to get so much like clout for that tweet that he sent to Baked Beans? Like, I mean, he is blown up. That if any tweet of mine went as viral as that gentleman's tweet towards the Baked Beans, like I'd be rolling in clout.
Maybe you know how Mason worked on Modern Horizons 3? Maybe that
Yeah.
gentleman actually worked on the bean set and was ready for this way in advance and just knew that the beanstalk was going to come out and said, I'm going to get all the magic clout on Magic Twitter. I'm ready for
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Wow. A shadow designer. Okay. Yeah, of course. It's
Could
a
be.
Facebook post, but whatever. That Facebook post went into a tweet and, made that person famous.
Did indeed, and it looks like we see Javier hovering the Leyline Binding here. Do you think he's going to cast Leyline Binding or maybe opting for Shardless Agent into a third copy of Bean?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, it has so many options here. Decided to tap that white mana, so it looks like isn't super interested in casting like double leyline binding or something here. So I assume we'll just see draw some extra cards, head to Mason's turn, and then maybe leyline binding. You can also ice down a land and leyline binding. And I don't know any great ice targets here.
Maybe a blue source if he's expecting the Jace, but without knowing about the
Yeah.
Jace, looks like just the Mistveil Plains.
Now, Mistveil Plains puts something on top, right? I know this is some
On the
tech, but I kind
bottom.
of forgot. Oh, yeah. So it's just so you don't deck, right?
Yeah,
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
I believe it's 1 white tap, put target card in your graveyard onto the bottom of your library.
Excellent. Excellent. So have you played these bean decks? I know, you're a very popular streamer. I watch your channel all the time. You're very entertaining. But, whenever you're trying, you play scam. Is that the plan? Like, is that like your only love for this metagame, or do you kind of like some other stuff?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm too much of a zoomer. I don't have the attention span to play these bean mirrors. At a certain
Mm,
point, I'm like, I just want the game to be over. And no
yes.
card in Modern ends the game faster against these bean decks than Orcish Bowmasters right now. So as long as that card's
Yes.
legal, I'm gonna keep archering.
Whoa, wait. Dingo, does that mean I am too a zoomer?
I think
Because now
so.
I'm
You're an
into that as
honorary
well.
one.
Wow. Okay. I've cut 10 or 15 years off my life by playing scam.
You drank
Okay.
from the fountain of scam.
I I've drank the salty tears of my opponent enough where I have now become a zoomer. Wow, it's like the
That's
fountain
right.
of youth in Magic Online.
Exactly. And we
Yeah.
see Solitude come across at this Teferi, and Solitude back draws 3 more cards. 30 cards left in library for Javier. If you're Javier, are you concerned about decking at all? You have that 1 copy of Endurance, but other than that, you are, well,
Uh,
kind of kind of a dog getting decked. No Mistveil Plains in this list.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of looking at the list right now to see what Javier does for decking. And yeah, there's just really not a plan there. So he has to close out the game in some way. There's the one endurance, which can give you extra cards in your deck. That's kind of Javier's misveil planes.
Yeah, and
But
then
I would definitely say these long games where each players are drawing an absurd amount of cards is gonna favor Mason with that Jace, with these time warps. But you just look at a point at this point, Javier is just going to, from here on out, play a threat that is going to draw himself 3 cards, have an active Teferi, and it's just going to be one of those scenarios where Mason, without having a bunch of these beans, is not able to compete in a meaningful way that will kind of counteract the maybe milling out or maybe decking yourself plan here. So I think Javier's well and truly in the driver's seat here.
yeah, there is a notable interaction where if you stack the evoke trigger kind of reverse from what you would do on a scam stack with
Uh,
endurance, you
yeah.
can put the endurance into the graveyard and then shuffle the endurance back in, targeting yourself.
Oh, so you can perpetually have endurances in your deck unless it gets
Correct.
leyline binding or something like that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
solitude or binding, but as long as the Teferi's out, nothing can interact with that.
yeah, I mean, being a avid scam gamer as I am for the last, 4 or 5 days in total, I of course never stack my triggers that way, and I only stack them correctly,
Right.
young dingo. So I,
There's
I
only
didn't
one way to
even I
stack
didn't
them.
even see that play. So that makes sense. All right, so it looks like Javier discarding to hand size there leaves himself with 3 Leyline Binding, Magmatic Sinkhole, Solitude Teferi Fury, aka a full gasoline tank, ready to start some fires here with Mason.
Yeah, our producer's working overtime to keep adjusting
Yeah.
the hand sizes as there are 10 plus cards in hand at any given time in these bean mirrors. Absolutely a delight to watch.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, Dingo, I'm just getting word here from Jordan, our producer. This is his last day. He
Oh,
just put in his notice
put in his
after
two
this bean
weeks.
mirror. So yeah, put in his 2 games.
Oh, it's
His
two
two
games?
games notice. Yeah. So hey,
I was
thanks
gonna
a lot,
say,
Jordan, for everything.
if he put in the 2 weeks, that's enough time to finish the Super League, which I don't think he wants to do at this point.
All right. So here we go. We're gonna see a time warp here. I don't really see any, interaction that you can have as far as game one is countering these spells or anything like that. So Mason can just kind of pop off with these. And then post board, Javier has access to Force of Negations, Force of Vigors, even Unmoored Ego is probably gonna come in. Yeah. So kind of looking at this, Dingo, is there one of these players after you ruthlessly defeat me in the next round that you would rather play from the scam side, or is this something that both of these decks are kind of similar? You feel pretty neutral about the matchup.
I'm looking at the sideboard. Those 2 copies of Sunfall kinda scare me from Mason's sideboard right now, so maybe I'd rather play against Javier if I
Mm,
were to pick a bean list to play against because he's got less Cascaders, which means less consistent beans on 3, and I
okay.
think that I like my chances a little bit more against Javier's list because he has less consistent beans that way, but either way, my game plan against either of these bean lists is gonna be the same. I'm the aggro deck. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try to beat down as fast as possible because I am not winning the late game if we make it there.
Absolutely not. So, would you say we're in a good position against them, or probably disadvantaged? I know,
I'll
I know every Beans player says, "Yeah, I crush scam." Every scam player says, "I crush Beans." So, I feel like I'm asking this question in vain. But what do you
I
think?
feel like I'm team Bean Crusher. I think that Scam does very well against the Bean list because of Bowmaster and multiple copies of Shield Root out of the sideboard that we've recently adapted.
Sure.
But it could very easily go the other way.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Very volatile matchup. Anything could happen. The card advantage out of the Bean side is crazy, and it doesn't take too many ley line bindings for them to be able to stabilize and get very, very far ahead. I'm very happy that neither of these players have opted to play 4 copies of Sanctifier and Vec in their sideboard because I had a Beans player at the Apex Open actually
Yeah.
cascade into Sanctifier and Vec on turn 3, and I was said, I I can't beat that. I lose. I've never seen something like that in my life.
Yeah, that's pretty hot tech. I guess there really is not much you can do, right? I mean, If you have like Bone Crusher Giant, you can attack into it, I guess, and then it loses the protection,
Yeah,
right? And that's kind of the only thing.
I didn't have any bone crushers, so I said, "All right, let's go to game 3. I'll sideboard in my engineered explosives."
And then did you win the match? That's the
I
main
did,
thing.
I did.
All right, got him,
I
got
got
him.
very lucky.
Caldwell, Ohio as well. Big fan. I've played in exactly one and I had the time of my life.
Yeah, you crushed me in Pioneer.
That I did in a what, all these blue white Lotus Field control players says is their best
Best
matchup.
matchup, and then Karn comes down and you're
Yeah.
like, "Never mind."
Yeah, it's always your best matchup till you're on the draw against mono green. That's what I always say.
I looking at this board state, I don't think Javier can lose.
I don't think so either. I think this has been pretty done. I mean, it's so crazy to think like these games are decided by like turn 5 and stuff, because that's definitely not true. But like the fact that you really see where the tempo's going, like the bean count, if it's 2-0, it's pretty tough to come back from those scenarios, even though the game lasts another 10 turns.
Oh yeah, it's just like the game's decided, but Mason's once again expending all of his screen time possible, being like, maybe I have a chance if I like, chain Omnath into Bean into Leyline Vine. Mason, you're done. Pack it
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
Let's
Hey,
go to
I
the next
mean,
game.
he said to you earlier, he's trying to get camera time. You don't just say you're gonna get camera time and then give up your camera time here, young Dingo. Come on, that would be Mason's first misplay of the day.
And it looks like Omnath is coming down on the side of Mason into this fetch land, into probably Lorien revealed. Try to refill a little bit. He's got no more blue sources in the decks though. He's got that one Zagoth Triome as the blue
Yeah.
source, but not anymore. Shardless Agent does nothing in the face of the Teferi. And I talked about that a little bit earlier before the match even started. These Teferis have been really good against the Cascade mechanic out of Mason, and it's preventing him from getting extra beans.
Yeah. Yeah, Teferi on turn 3 is ticked up and down so many times that, the value of that card is already so extremely good in these mirror matches. But when it's left unchecked and you can't, Fury it away, which Javier has just played it very tightly, where only bounced when he had to, the Omnath turn, and has just since ticked it back up and is not really that afraid of it. Plus, Javier's deck, I think, is more well set up to deal with Teferis. Just so happens Mason's version just doesn't have them.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Mason and I did do an IHOP grudge match when we played against each other at the Apex Open not too long ago, and he ended up taking it over it. So I get to call all of his Omnats Omlets for the rest of time.
Ah, okay. Perfect,
Anytime he
perfect.
cast it, it's an omelet.
And the entire IHOP staff was like, why are these people playing magic cards in my restaurant instead of leaving?
Yeah, have you seen these
Sound about right?
yeah, those IHOP sleeves and the playmat too? Oh, they look so sick.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. It is a combination I didn't know I wanted until it became a thing. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, you're like, I didn't know I did this until now.
Exactly.
Another
All right.
Fury and a Fire Ice were the pickups from Mason. Still can't deal with this Teferi. This Teferi has been the bane of Mason's existence. He's shot a couple of fires at previous Teferi. I think this is the second copy from Javier in his last copy. He just can't get rid of them. They just
Yep, just
got too
can't
much
get rid of
loyalty.
them. And I mean, you can try to, pitch a Fury now or just fire it to deal some points of damage. And it looks like what we're going for. Now, this is probably just to deal with Omnath instead of Teferi. But yeah, just rocking a hard place here for Mason. Really not much play that he's had very early on.
3-1, taking out the Fury, dealing 1 damage to Teferi. Goodbye, Fury. And maybe we see no, we can't even see the Shardless Agent because the mana is very poor. Thanks, Miss Veil Plains.
Yeah, I mean, for how amazing, the fetch shock mana bases are in modern, when you stretch it to its ultimate, like we're seeing in these Cascade decks, Cascade into Beam style decks, there's still problems with mana. And I mean, I played this deck at a SCG not too long ago, just like the straight Omnath version, kind of, non-Cascade beans. But they all kind of play the same. The hardest part of the deck is just what first few fetch lands you want to be getting, because you know it can really punish you when you get to these Omnath fetch land turns, which you know we really saw that Omnath into Time Warp turn where that was like Mason's only hope. But with having the Hallowed Fountain and having the Breeding Pool in play already, kind of negated that possibility of really taking over the game.
Yeah, fetching is difficult, and we see that Mistveil planes get Besaged and get upgraded to produce 2 colors instead of 1, and it became a Temple Garden, lost the activated ability. So, now if we get to the point in the game where Mason will deck and does not have this Jace to win the game, Mason will die. No more
That's
Mistveil
true.
planes.
That's true. And I think that's going to happen, especially with 2 crisp, clean answers from Javier, just, at the left side of the hand that haven't moved, in a while. And like, sure, Omnath here looks good. Looks like a nice play. But, with the trigger on the stack, Solitude can come in. You can Gaunt it. You can Leyline Binding 1 or 2 it. There's just so many things. And this Endurance is protected by Teferi. So there's no kind of scenario where Mason can interact with the Endurance in such a way where it can't do that loop that you were talking about to prevent Javier from decking.
Precisely, and we have Hello Omnath on the stack. So Mason's got this bit where he says hello and then follows it with a card name. He likes to say hello Oko, and this one's Hello Omnath. As it comes down, draws a card, and this Misty Rainforest will allow this Omnath to make a few more mana as long as Mason's got another fetchable.
Dingo, that Mason will be doing commentary of matches later, so you can save his silly jokes for him, right? Otherwise, they're just going to hear Mason's silly jokes in 100% of the broadcast. I mean, we gotta help out the viewers a little bit here.
Yeah, you're right. But I just have to say him because he literally messaged me on MTGO. He said hello Oko before his match even started.
Wow. So he's trying to not only get camera time while playing, but trying to commentate while playing as well. That's really trying to get the spotlight. I like it. Smart.
Yeah, he said, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but insert
here's
my
how to do
funny
your
bits.
job. Love it. Love it. All right. So we're seeing Solitude come down here to deal with Omnath with the trigger on the stack.
Into exile Omnath goes, truly in solitude now. 4 life for Mason. And I can't see what turn it is, but I have to imagine it's probably in the 20s at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of blacked out the last 4 turns here. I've
Only
I
11.
gotta...
It feels like 20 though.
It really does. Yeah, and I mean these games, like we were kind of saying, it just becomes really trivial once it's this style of board state. And I think if you're testing for a pro tour or something like this would be the point of the game and be like, okay, let's go to the next game. But here at the Super League, there's so many great prizes on the line thanks to Daybreak Games, and so many fun things to do if you advance into the top 8 that, hey, even if it's a less than a 1% chance, might as well try to get all your odds here.
Yeah, Mason's getting his requisite camera time. 12 cards in the deck from Javier. We see the Endurance come down, target himself. 17 more cards in the deck, up to 29. I kind of feel like Javier is just being like, Mason, I'm not going to deck myself. Would you like to concede?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Mason's waiting for Javier's first mistake that he's ever made in the game of Magic. It's got to come at some point. Might as well be here. Might as well be against him.
And we need to see Teferi tick up and pick up this Endurance and prevent himself from decking once again. Doesn't even need to evoke it and do that fancy evoke loop I was talking about. Can just bounce it back to hand. Have this Teferi on too. Still not going to die because he's got a Jachache and nothing else in hand over there. Embarrassing.
Just embarrassing.
It's
Absolutely.
just embarrassing.
That's the perfect word for it. Just a sheer embarrassment. Haven't seen that card played since like it was the win con for Kethis decks.
Maybe a little Inverter and Pioneer.
There we go. Okay, that's right. I didn't think you'd remember that one. I didn't know. 5 years back or whatever.
I'm a zoomer, but I'm not that much of a zoomer.
Okay.
Yep, we see him pick up the Endurance like we talked about. It looks like he's going to go after the 4th copy of Beans. Nope, just kidding. The 4th copy of Beans is probably somewhere off screen at this point. Not in the deck, or decided not to cast it if it is in the deck, which makes sense. Doesn't want to give himself any risk of decking, but he can pitch this Omnath and evoke the Endurance through the loop. And it
Yeah,
looks
and a
like
quick
just
Oh,
going through the
sorry to
motions.
interrupt you there. Quick shout out here, extremely popular streamer Aspiring Spike in chat. So, hey, what's up, first of all? Second of all, I mean, Spike usually has a heavy influence on metagames like he does on this one, but suggested bean mirrors should be best of 5, no round timers. So, if we can get him banned for life from this chat mods, that would be great. While they're working on that, just wanted to give him a quick shout out, of course. Big fan. Not a big fan today after reading that comment. Of course, Aspiring Spike. I'm going to go unsubscribe from the channel right now. Okay,
Yeah,
there we
if Anzid could give me a sword, that would be fantastic.
go.
If not, I'll have somebody else handle it pronto.
Whoa, whoa. Young Dingo went all the way to putting a hit on Aspiring Spike. I just made a chill joke, buddy. Come
1 million
on.
bounty up for Spike right now.
We're having fun here, buddy. Run, Spike.
It's not a safe space for you here.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, most of the time, Aspiring Spike does really mold what modern looks like. And after looking at this board state, I think we can all collectively say, are you happy with what you've done? Can you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day there, Spike?
Is this what you wanted?
Is this what you wanted? Is this your pretty, shiny modern world that you dreamed of when you decided to cascade into a 2-mana cantrip?
And Javier decided that, well, cascading into a 2-mana cantrip was good enough 3 times over. Takes it. All right.
Takes it down. Okay, so Young Dingo, what do we think we're siding in? Let's start with Mason as he is down a game here. What does he do to kind of get back in the game? What are you bringing in?
All right, looks like Mason's actually sorting it out very nicely for us. He's thinking about taking out the Ardent Please and the Fire Ice, bringing in 2 copies of Sunfall, 1 copy of Commandeer, 2 Force of Vigors, and the Inevitable Betrayal. What do you think the Inevitable Betrayal is going to go after in this matchup?
I mean, even just Omnath is fine, but I had some hot tech, in air quotes here. I copied Theo. Sorry, I don't remember Theo's last name. My bad. But he crushed the NRG series a couple weeks ago with an Omnath build and had one of Sundering Titan in the sideboard. So I'm kind of, I put most of my testing into standard for that event. So I didn't play a ton of modern. I'm like, you know what? Theo's an extremely smart player. I'm just going to copy him. And I bring in Sundering Titan, not really seeing all this Inevitable Betrayal tech. It didn't go well for me in the mirror match. I'll tell you that. I'll just leave it at that.
I believe it's Theo Jung because I've played against him
Okay.
in Moto quite a few times.
Perfect. Yeah, an
Yeah.
awesome player, really nice guy as well.
And we see actually Javier is taking out 2 copies of Solitude, 2 copies of Fury. Deciding to pitch elementals, not necessary in this matchup. What do you
That
think
would
of
make
that?
sense to me, right? Like that's something that you want a few to answer Omnath, and that's decent. Ooh, this is interesting. Just I was wondering if anyone was gonna do this. Just take out Leyline Binding so you're not as vulnerable to other Force of Vigors. It's interesting.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
and also, Leyline Binding kinda has the mental misstep effect, where the best answer to Leyline Binding is an opposing copy of Leyline Binding, and if you stick a Beans under a Leyline Binding, and they're able to deal with it, they get another ETB off the Beans, and that could put you very far behind. So I kinda like cutting all the copies of Leyline Binding here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's also, one of your best cards. So, you get put in a weird spot where you draw Solitude when it's supposed to be a Leyline Binding, and it could be like completely game breaking. So I can see the give and take on both, and I really don't know what is correct. So, all right, looking at the opening hands, Mr. Dingo. How do you like them?
Uh, Javier's got a little bit of a sketchy mana base, but Lorien Revealed is there to fix it. And
Yep.
on the side of Mason, it looks like he's keeping a 2-lander with nothing to do on turn 2, hoping to rip that 3rd land in the next couple of draw steps to cast Shardless Agent into the Bean. We do see that 1 copy of Sunfall, or one of the 2 copies of Sunfall, I should say, that
Yep.
came in from the sideboarding. I'm excited to see how that plays out in this matchup.
Yeah, Sunfall, interesting in this spot. It's not going to hit a lot of targets, so maybe not ideal. Definitely going to be an all-star against us.
Oh,
Trying to have a wide battlefield. Sunfall just seems absolutely devastating. Turns out if you go with not dead after all in response to this, it's still dead after all.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
facts.
I
Yeah,
played
big
a lot of that
facts.
card in Pioneer this weekend, and it is a house. Exile all creatures, then incubate X, where X is the number of creatures, and you can spend 2 mana to flip that incubate into a colorless creature. Very
Did
powerful
you
card.
did you exile any Karns with that or?
Oh, it does not exile planeswalkers, unfortunately, nor will I have any mana because of Damping Sphere, but that's okay.
Yeah, congrats on your I watched a little bit of the Pioneer at the end. Did you I want to say you cast 0 spells in the finals but played the
Correct.
finals?
I was there, I was present during the
Yeah.
finals.
You shuffled, right?
I shuffled, I
Okay.
mulliganed,
Okay.
I was present. I did not cast a spell in either
Interesting.
game. I died on turn 3, 1 game, and then I died on turn 4 the next game through cycling the Shark Typhoon. Not didn't cast a spell though.
Honestly, that's more impressive than like, crushing your opponent 2-0 or something. Not playing a single spell is a true like, just impressive feat. So,
I'm putting that on my
congrats. So
resume.
you yeah, you yeah, you should. So you took second in both events, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome still. Great finish, man. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Didn't get my Denver invite, but I got a couple more shots at that Denver RC before it's up in February, so I'm excited to try to qualify for that.
Yeah, yeah. But you did qualify for the Denver No Plays Open. It's for everybody who didn't make a single play in the finals of their RCQ. So far, you're in a field all by yourself, but,
Hey,
impressive.
first winner.
Number one.
Number 1, 1 of 1. Can't lose.
All right, getting back into this game. Looks like we have Mason's turn here. Haven't played a land yet. Looking to play Zagoth Triumph, but then as I see, there's not a single thing you can do unless you want to pitch some of these elementals. So yeah, just passing of the turn here.
Yeah, a bunch of 5 drops in hand, kinda cluttering up Mason's hand right now. Does not wanna suspend that inevitable betrayal. How much is it to suspend? I'm not familiar.
It's 3 and it's 2 blue, so not an option as well.
Nice mana base, Mason.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably not the card you want to be drawing. I believe the inevitable betrayal betrays you if you draw it. So it's a little bit of a two-faced card there.
It is indeed, and we see Plains as the pickup for Javier. Probably just gonna go with the Teferi bounce, maybe the Shardless Agent?
Yeah, and the one thing that's slightly risky is there's not a lot of commandeers, which I don't know if that card was like a flash in the pan as like the hot thing to be doing. I remember, one of the better Magic players I know, Tristan Wild LaRue, doing really well with a deck, pretty revolutionary 70 cards in the main deck, bunch of commandeers as kind of the plan to take over these bean decks. Not a lot of them here, but those kind of plays where you just play Teferi and your opponent commandeers it ends up being so ridiculously backbreaking that sometimes it's a risk to play your own cards. But with it only being a one of, you can't really play around it.
That indeed, and we see Mason pick up a fetch land. You got the 6/2 buff of being able to amazingly top deck fetch land off of this Omnath here. Now
Yeah.
we get to go Omnath fetch land into Fury on the Teferi, or maybe one of his other 5 mana plays, Time Warp.
Yeah, I
Mayhaps?
mean this looks amazing here. I mean, that was one heck of a draw. Being able to now have that blue mana available, probably a plethora of them. Assume
Steam Brain?
Breeding Pool or even just Island. Not sure how many basics they're playing, but regardless, has the option to time warp here. And if that's what Mason ends up going for, it's going to look real, real good for Mason.
Yeah, he's getting the Steam Vents so that way he can hard cast the Fury next turn if need be. Time Warp, draw a card, take a turn. Looking pretty good for virtually 1 mana here after the Omnath follow-up. Probably
Yep.
gonna put Mason unbelievably far ahead and might take us to a game 3, Corey. So I hope you got your most comfortable blanket and some hot cocoa to sip.
Yeah, if you ever just hear me disappear for a second, I'm sprinting to the bathroom after our, 1 hour and 45 minutes into the first match. So,
Understandable.
you just have to cover me, buddy.
Oh, I will. And I know Mason was like stressing out. He was like, I cannot be down on clock during this match. I need as much time as possible so I can get the full bean juice value. Every single
Hmm.
second siphoned off my moto clock.
Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, honestly, that does make sense. If you're playing in these kind of events, we have a larger clock than what you normally would see. Let's say you're playing in one of the Magic Online challenges, anything like that. So there's more time to play with, but when you're still in this match, sometimes it doesn't matter if each players have 10 extra minutes. It could still go to time. And that's why I just don't like playing this mirror match at all, Young Dingo. I'm
You
with
and me
you.
both.
I'm evoking grief. I'm getting this game done with. Okay.
If I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna lose fast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We got places to be. But now we're kind of tied into these bean gamers here. They are just trying to stall us into them where no matter what, we're going to be hanging out here with them just as long as, they're gaming against each other. So, we're kind of locked in this time.
Yeah, they're keeping us hostage here indeed, and we see Shardless Agent coming on down.
All right.
Cascade into Bean.
Yep.
Yep.
Able to go into the bean. Now the Force of Vigor is online to deal with both of these. And this is huge. If you can deal with both of these beanstalks and force Mason to have to reload, that really does slow down the deck quite a bit.
Leyline Binding taking Javier's Bean also. Whoop. And I mean, it came with a divination staple to it too. Not too bad. I mean, maybe we'd see Fury get taken here, but I think because of the Solitude in hand and the Sunfall, you probably just want to get the Bean off the table. And Mason
Yeah.
agrees. Second copy of Leyline Binding, divination number 2, 1 mana, removal spell. And I don't want to call it too early. I really do want to call it too early. I
Yeah, we
think
really
Mason's
do.
very far ahead right now.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, every single one of these games, like you look at this board state and you're like, yeah, this match is still going to go on for a while even though one player is extremely favored. It's just not going to happen, I mean, this is still going to be a game that will kind of bleed on for a while here.
All right, game 3 out of our 5-match series here between these two Bean players, just as Spike envisioned. This is the updated state of Modern, and I hope I
I
hope
love these
Spike's
updated
happy.
state of modern tweets too. They crack me up every time. Oh man.
This is what you wanted, Spike.
Yeah. Oh man. As much grief as we're giving Spike for creating this game, there has been so many decks that I've played that Spike has created that have brought me like immense joy. I mean, the Grixis Shadow deck that he created with Dress Down and stuff like was one of my favorite decks of all time. That ended up, going on to needing to be banned. Like so Spike definitely he does it. He does it. That's for sure.
Whenever I run into Cascade Beans in a league, I get to tilt my head back, look up at the sky, and go, Spike! Every single time, because I know who caused this deep down in my heart.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much.
A little fetching from Mason, getting a Temple Garden. Shocks it in. Bean?
Start with Bean and then looks like has Solitude available as well. So, yeah, I think we're done here. I think we're going to be heading to game number 3. Oh, yeah, Time Warp
Oh,
as well with the double blue. I think that's
GG.
just game right now, right?
Shake my hand. You can get
Yep,
to go Time Warp, untap Fury into random game actions, win the game.
absolutely. So buckle up, chat. We're gonna be hanging on here for a little bit longer.
Evoke a Solitude, replace 2 cards, 2 for 2. And we picked up the Commandeer also, which means there's going to be absolutely no relevant spells on the side of Javier. But Javier's not even going to get another turn here. He does get to potentially Besage you a Leyline Bind and get back the Fury, which is
Yeah,
good. Not
yeah, it's a
good
nice
enough.
play. And even Besaju's end up being pretty nice in these kind of bean mirror matches where you can just be able to destroy these leyline bindings or just up the beanstalks, but giving your opponent the land is a real cost.
Yeah, we see the Mistveil Plains as the thing we grab off the Beseju. Mason's like, I'm not going to deck myself, Javier. I got you in checkmate now.
Yeah, I like that they're both just, I mean, either letting it play out to see if the other person will make a mistake. Or honestly, the thing that probably makes a lot more sense is just playing to the clock. You know, Javier gets to just F6 now and have Mason eat up some of the clicks. You know, this is something that I don't think is going to come up with both players having around 20 minutes for one game. But when you're in a challenge here on Magic Online, you know, on the weekends and stuff like that, players are going to make you, you know, kill them, you know? So you got to be able to click fast if you're going to play this game or if you're going to play this deck here.
Absolutely.
It's just part of it.
And this is why all the Magic Online challenge rounds go to time every single round now.
No, that's
Because of
Anurag's
the
fault.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
always
partially.
Anurag.
He's also playing beans though, but he's like, "Alright, I'm gonna go even more dirtily, I'm playing Counterspell
That's
and
true.
Logic
That's
Bomb."
true. Yeah. All right, and that's Mason Clark winning that game. We're going to be heading to game number 3 here. We talked a little bit in depth of how kind of Mason was sideboarding, you know, kind of looking over to Javier, bringing in these force negations, bringing in, you know, the other Teferi. And we do see the unmoored ego in there somewhere, right? Oh, yeah, there it is.
Uh,
Okay, on the left there.
yeah, it's a little bit cut off, but yep, it's there. I'm more to go probably naming bean, maybe Omnath, because Omnath is the only source of life gain outside of the Solitude life link. So maybe you just like wanna name Omnath with it and prevent this incidental life gain that's coming out and maybe just try to like race them. It's probably naming beans though, depending on how many beans are actually on the table at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you get it on turn 3, you're on the play, you're going to name up the beanstalk. But, you know, if there's already 3 in play, you're not going to try to get one of them out of there. Maybe that's the point where you name something like Time Warp to prevent them from drawing cards like that. So, all right, everyone, game number 3 here. This is Javier Dominguez on the play up against Mason Clark. Mason Clark up top with that Jason hand, and Javier's hand with up the beanstalk on 2, into Charlotte's Agent on 3. That's the dream, right?
Both of these hands are looking very good from each player. Maybe Mason's on like a virtual mulligan to 6 because he keeps drawing this chachache, as I like to call it. But another Cascader off to the top for Mason is probably going to undo that virtual mulligan because that's another beanstalk.
Yep, absolutely. And just both players going to be firing on all cylinders here. Both draws are good. And that's kind of all you need is the early game to be decent for both players. And then you're just, you know, buckle up, you know, because we're in for a long game at that point, almost no matter what.
This will
But
probably be the longest game we watch today on this Super League.
I
Calling
mean,
it now.
to be fair, this being said, if you just play Teferi here and you're able to tick up, I mean, that's just a huge advantage, right? If you can dodge the Fury and prevent the Shardless Agent and aid, Artem plays like, I mean, all of a sudden that Teferi draw was amazing.
Yeah, that Teferi was actually very insane for Javier because Mason doesn't have a clean answer to it. Turns out 5 is not 4, so Fury cannot take care of this Teferi right now. Time Warp is the pickup, not helpful there. Are we going to deploy a, well, naked Shardless Agent? Shardless
Oh,
Agent with no bean.
yeah, a sad agent here. I think you kind of have to, right?
Oof, that cannot feel good from Mason's side. And now this Endurance can actually just jump in front of the Shardless Agent, but I kind of expect to see a Shardless Agent of Javier's own. Not too big of a cost to just run it out as a blocker. Fury can do 2 damage to that, 2 damage to the Teferi, and
Oh.
Mason still won't be able to kill it unless he
Yeah, I
draws
mean,
another red card.
so yeah, Fury 2 to that, 2 to that. It's gonna be at 3. You can tick up. Yep. That's what I'm seeing is you need another red card. Otherwise, this could just be a runaway from Javier, and that would mean Javier would play the winner of me and Dingo, and the loser would go against Mason Clark.
Yeah, this is the only time we're gonna see a bean mirror, and then we're gonna see a scam mirror, and then it's gonna be bean on scam, bean on scam.
Yeah, it's like, okay, who is the better of the bean players? Who is the better of the scam players? Battle off.
Fight to the
And
death.
then yeah, and then we'll see, you know, at that point when we get to 1-on-1 battles, you know, if it's like the 2 people playing up the beanstalk or it's the 2 people playing scam, those are the bragging rights on what the better deck is. So we got a lot of weight to pull here, young Dingo, where we just gotta at least win all our matches outside of playing against each other.
I hope
Deal?
that both of the scam players advance and both of the beam players get eliminated.
You know what?
I'm putting it out there right now.
I would tend to agree with you, and I think chat can get behind us as well on that. What do you think, chat? Are we going for the Up the Beanstalk gamers or the grief gamers here?
Producer, run a poll. Do we want to see scam or do we want to see beans more?
And we'll have zero control of it, but you know, I like the first comment. Ban them all. There you go. That's it.
5 mana, Fury.
Right, here it is.
Divination stapled to it. 1, 2. Elish Norn was a pickup.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely fantastic. Get to do 4 damage to that Shardless agent. And Mason, you're dead. I'm not going to call it too soon, but Mason, you're in trouble.
Young Dingo, you keep calling it and then saying, I'm not going to call it. You know, you have to do it in the other order there, buddy.
Bad habit. I'm sorry. But Spike and I talked about this last time. We did commentary together.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. Mason,
Nice.
you're in danger.
That is fair. Yeah, I mean, these Elish Norns, when you don't play any Teferi, I mean, they're just GG, right? Like, Teferi is the only answer to bounce them. Everything else is all coming to playabilities. Isn't that correct? At
I
least
believe
from
so.
Mason's side? Unless you do something absurd like, you know, oh, wait, you can't even 4x fire. Yeah, you need to 4x fire it. Okay, we found it.
It looked
Just
like
fire 4 times.
It looked like Mason wanted to cast the Jace just to be like, I have Jace in my deck, just to show the people. But
Yeah.
instead, I feel like he should probably cast the Omnath, hope to rip a fetch land and get lucky.
Yes, I think that is well and truly the better play. But the one benefit or disadvantage of that is even with a fetch land, you can't cast Jace. That's no good.
Not good for Mason here. Can't cast anything in his hand without evoking this Fury. Probably has to Fury the Fury plus 1 damage to the Teferi, and, well, I think it's over.
100%. I would have to agree with you. And, you know, that is another thing where these lists have kind of turned away from playing cards like Prismatic Ending. You know, like there used to be 2 to 3 of those, maybe even a 4 of in these early versions of Up the Beanstalk decks. And that was a clean way to deal with Teferi. But now, you know, Javier just knows, especially with this being an open deck list event, that he can just keep ticking up, you know, I mean, and be pretty safe.
Mom, I want ETB effects. We have ETB effects at home, Mason. Elish Norn comes down, and that is most certainly going to spell defeat for Mason. He did draw the Sunfall, but no 5th land for Mason, so no answer to this Elish Norn yet. Needs another white source on top of that. Only one white source in the form of the Hollow Fountain. Beans, no ETB. Feels bad.
So miserable. And even when the Sunfall comes down, the Force of Negation is there to deal with it. So, like, I think Mason is going for camera time now, huh? Oh, I guess you do get the Up the Beanstalk off the cast trigger of that. You just don't get it when Beans comes into play.
He still
That
does get a
makes sense.
3/3 double striker and a 3/2 lifelinker here on the side of Mason, but I don't think that's going to be good enough.
Oh, I suppose because the evoke trigger doesn't happen either, huh? Elish
Yeah.
Norn is a tricky magic card, y'all.
Another Beans coming down, no ETB. It looks like it's going to eat a Force. Javier, kind of playing into the Sunfall a little bit.
Yeah, that could spell some danger here.
It is open deck list, so Sunfall might be
Oh,
on
never
out.
mind. There's another Force.
This is why he's a world champion.
Yeah, yeah.
Never mind.
Why save your spells when you're gonna draw replacements? I mean, that just makes sense. Oh yeah, now we're gonna deal 8 damage. So goodbye, creatures. All right, and there we go. Javier Dominguez taking down the very first match here up against Mason Clark.